Good afternoon. Today is October 9th, 2017. It's about 5:06 p.m. This is the Streets and Sidewalks Committee, and over on my far right, across the dais here, is Councilwoman Lynn Snee, and to my immediate left is Councilman Brock Heath, and I'm Bob Phillips, the chairman of the Streets and Sidewalks Committee. We have three items that we're going to talk about, and the first is the improvement and going out to bid for a North Market Street improvement project. And Mrs. Butera, you're going to start us off and show us some things here.
So the North Market Street project is a reconstruction from, I'm trying to see if this has a laser on it. Oh, okay, it does. So a reconstruction starting at Fossway and proceeding north up to Stony Ridge Drive. We'll be installing new storm sewers. There'll be some water work, a little bit of sanitary work. The majority of what the traveling public are going to recognize are the new sidewalks, new curb, and then the current roadway is an existing, it has 4 lanes, 2 lanes north and 2 lanes south. But there are only about 6,900 vehicles that travel that route. And so kind of rule of thumb is that you don't need 4 lanes until you're getting up into a number that's double, almost triple that. So about 15,000 to 20,000 vehicles. So in light of the fact of the volumes being so low, we're going to take the opportunity to narrow the asphalt just a little bit. So it's currently 51 feet from back of curb to back of curb. We're taking it down to 48 feet. In that profile, you're going to see 3 lanes, a northbound, a southbound, the center, what you call a suicide lane, that turn lane. There's going to be a new tree lawn on the east side of the roadway where you don't currently see it now. And there will also be a bike lane northbound and southbound up until we get to Cricket Drive. So I can kind of flip through some of these. So you'll see we'll have to do some striping changes a little bit south of Fossway. Currently this is a 4-lane section. There's not a left turn lane. There's not a right drop lane. So we'll be adding the left, the through, the right drop. And then it really is pretty consistent as you head north, like I said. So the through lane both directions. You've got this center suicide lane, and then bike lanes on either direction. So if I keep moving up.
Just for the folks that may be looking at this online, the wild guess, or the traffic count, the term that you used, is actually a traffic recommendation by the standardized numbers and charts that you use. It's not a scientific wild guess.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. So you'll see as we get a little farther north up near Cricket Lane, we are removing that traffic signal, and we will be installing, you'll have a striped crosswalk, and we'll have an additional rapid flashing beacon like we have currently farther south on North Market Street. So right here you'll see is where the bike lanes will drop off, and we'll transition into Sharrows as we get north of Cricket Lane. And we start again, there's currently parking on the east side of the road, and we will continue to allow that on-street parking on the east side of the road there. And then that takes us essentially up to our project limits. So we are requesting, there's currently only just over $1 million in the budget. When we do these budget numbers, we're doing them 3 to 5 years in advance of the actual project construction. We haven't even done design yet, typically, when these budget numbers are put in. And so now that it's been designed, our actual budget numbers are closer to the $1.87 million. So we are needing an additional about $800,000 in the project. As noted in the memo, we're requesting that the $600,000, $661,500 come from the current, there was about $1 million budgeted in the general government fund that was going to be transferred to the parks as part of the Duke Park levy. And with that levy's failure, we're requesting that that portion of those funds be used for this project. as well as there'll be additional funds needed in the stormwater and some dollars that are detailed out there in the water fund as well.
How much of the additional cost is attributed to the bicycle lane component of this? Do you have any idea?
I would say nominal other than the striping cost itself. Honestly, the goal moving forward was not, oh, we're going to get bicycle lanes out here. The goal was we're going to right size the roadway. The logic being if you can narrow up the roadway, it minimizes, making the asphalt narrow, it's less maintenance we have to do moving forward. And so it was really more of a bonus that in right sizing that, getting the extra tree lawn, that we felt we were able to have the room to stripe those bike lanes north and southbound. But aside from the actual paint on the ground that you'll see in those locations, our project cost would be no different with or without it.
Because I know the questions will be asked so the bicycle lanes were not a primary component of this, or actually weren't on the drawing board initially, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Moving along to another item, just a peripheral issue, the trees that we will be adding there, do you have a count of approximately what we will put in there?
Trees in the project?
In the tree line, or the parkway?
I don't know that we're planning to add, when I say tree lawn, I'm meaning the green space. We as part of this project, we don't have anticipated any additional trees being placed there.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
I apologize if I confused you.
Not a confusion, just made an assumption, so I'm glad I asked the question. At the moment, I don't have any other questions, but either one of two fellow committee folks.
If I may, the tree lawn that you mentioned, even if it's green space, that was only on Fastway, or is that continued up the project?
It continues for the full project. Currently, there's not that green space on the east side of the road for the majority of the length.
Okay.
So those residents are actually going to get the benefit of being just a little farther from the road than they are right now.
All right. And the parking spaces that begin after Cricket, they're not individually marked parking spaces, it's just a line, one stripe indicating that that's for parking?
Correct. And that's exactly how it is out there right now.
And one final question, the light removed at Cricket.
Correct.
That obviously would just be replaced with a stop sign, but people exiting Cricket would only have one lane of traffic in either direction to have to cross over if they're, I guess, making a left.
That's correct. So pulling out of Cricket and say attempting to make this left turn would just be where currently somebody pulling out of a resident pulling out of these driveways has to look at 2 lanes going northbound, 2 lanes going southbound, and try and judge a space distance. Do I have enough gap to get through there? In this case, you'll just be somebody attempting to make that left turn will just be looking at, there's 1 row of cars coming at them northbound, 1 row of cars coming at them southbound, and finding the gap to make that turn.
Okay.
Or if the gap is not there traveling southbound, then they have that middle lane to
go into.
To go into.
Okay. Thank you. That was all.
It would be at Cricket where the light is being removed. It would be confusing to have a flashing red and then for a pedestrian activation or the flashing pedestrian light to go to a red condition. It would not make sense to do any.
You're referring to the flash and beacon changing to a red when it's activated?
Right.
Honestly, I'm only aware of the flashing yellows, so I'm not even sure if that's possible. I think part of it is, as a pedestrian, as a driver, you both have responsibility, to not step off a curb, and I think sometimes maybe there's logic that if you have this flashing red, does it give you a bigger, falser sense of security?
Well, there is that train of thought, however, and a yellow light that is, I'm going to use the descriptor of like a normal traffic signal. However, when the pedestrian pushes the button to turn it to red, that obviously is the most safe, or at least the most acute for a driver to have violated if they did encroach upon that, instead of a flashing
Yellow.
yellow as an enforcement issue that puts the onus on us from the police department to prove one way or the other to make that judgment call, and sometimes in an accident investigation, that's pretty difficult.
And honestly, I'm not familiar enough with the traffic laws to know the difference between that. So other than saying the yellow flashing light is the only one that I'm familiar with. I mean, we could look into that closer, but I'm just not that familiar with that.
Well, from my standpoint, I think a recommendation from the police department might be something to look into. That might be something that we need to talk about.
We had consulted with the police department early on in this process. I know, at least in conversation with the chief. I mean, it's simply not warranted to have anything out there. And I'm not sure that with the way the traffic flows, that an interruption such as an activated red light would enhance rather than be, I guess, a detriment. I don't know what other way to put it. And I know that the pedestrian counts were extremely low.
I got ready to say, in
Very
all
low.
honesty,
Nobody's using it
we
anymore.
probably wouldn't have, it was more of, design probably wouldn't have recommended one, just feeling that, oh, we're removing a traffic signal, there's going to be some desire to have some sort of crossing there, but Mr. Titterington is right. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but the pedestrian counts there were non-existent, for lack of a better word.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, how long does the project take, and is it going to be torn up the entire length at one time?
So we're anticipating, assuming you make a positive recommendation to go to council and council authorizes us to proceed on to bid, that we would go out for bid yet this fall, with the bid opening early in November, such that the contractor would be able to start in spring, basically as soon as the weather breaks.
Okay.
So we would be talking essentially a through summer project to try to get it completed before school is
Okay.
before school is back in session.
But I think the plan is to try to keep the roadway open at least.
For the majority
similar
of
to
the
what we did.
project. There is some major storm work that happens to be in the center of the road that we'll have to work through and see. When we bid projects, we leave it to a contractor essentially to tell us how long that they can complete the work. So it's a double-edged sword. Obviously, they can get done quicker if you close the road, which is what we have been doing for McKeg for most of our other projects. Typically, if you allow traffic to stay there, it just means that it's taking your contractor longer to finish the job.
Right, right. And they're going to go through and make repairs and make differences the entire length at once? It's not going to go in pieces?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, and then the process as far as trying to estimate for the budget, sounds like we were off by a pretty good chunk. Is there something different that we can do there, or was there just kind of factors?
So there is. So Jill and I moving forward are trying to, so generally speaking, so estimates that maybe were done in the past, you kind of have a rule of thumb, right? It's this many length of roadway. I know a rule of thumb for what a water main costs that length, what sidewalk cost. In this case, there was a lot of road excavation embankment work that wouldn't have been anticipated when somebody was doing that estimate that many years ago. But so Jill and I moving forward, we are trying to do a better job of getting preliminary estimates. So for instance, this is an Ohio Public Works Commission is what's funding the project.
Okay.
So for the other projects we have in the queue for the next 3 years, we've had an outside engineering firm give us another preliminary estimate, basically just to double check our numbers and for us to do a better job moving forward of tying down these numbers ahead of time. It is a difficulty in that, for state funding like that, we're applying 3 years before the project's going to start. For federal funding, it's 5 or 6 years before the project's going to even start. And so at that point, you don't always have the full picture of what that project's going to look like.
Right.
But we are trying to do a better job of that.
And you do a great job, and I thought there was probably some factors in there that were tough to nail down because you've always done an amazing job. Just want to make sure that people are aware that that process happened, so they don't think that it was a huge change and
Right.
all the things that may go into that. Perfect. That's all the questions I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, just to add on to that, there is some elevation changes that were not originally anticipated because of age of stuff that has built up over time.
Correct.
That we're having to go down to road bed and rebuild.
Correct. On
So
that
that-
north side of the project limits, the center line of the roadway is being dropped about a foot.
Right.
Right.
And that's, yeah, okay. Any other questions, Mrs.?
I don't have any.
Any other council folks in the audience have any other questions? Comments? Mrs. Baker's going to come forward.
Is there a plan in place, I'm sorry, Marty Baker, I'm president of council. Is there a plan in place to notify the property owners along here that's consistent, something that all of them are gonna get a letter, or to notify the property owners, that businesses? Before
Notify them
construction.
how, and when we're ready to start the construction?
Right.
Okay,
or before
yes,
construction.
we will be notifying them. It can be as simple as sending around a flyer, if, you know. Some people have more technology than others. I'm not sure if we're gonna send them something in the
I would just add,
mail.
so we did have a public meeting during design, the fact that it was an assessment project, you know, each of those homeowners have been probably more aware of the scheduling of this project than other ones, the fact that we went through the whole assessment project, and I got notification. Yes, we can send a letter or do a mail drop at their home.
It's just one of those things that we constantly get beat up for. The other question I had was, I'm guessing why, but is the reason you're stopping the bike lane at Cricket Lane because it's parking from there on out?
Yes.
Is that the purpose?
That's correct. I think almost all of the residential property owners on the east side have a driveway, but it is limited space, and so we do see infrequent on-street parking, but depending on the time of the day of the week, and so we felt like north of Cricket, we could keep it as a share road and not impact their parking.
Okay, and it'll be marked as a shared road then?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions or items from the audience? Okay. Any other comments from staff?
Mr. Chair, just
Yes,
one more thing
sure.
to add, speaking of the bike connections. I believe in your packet, in your report, you should have had an aerial that shows that area and designates where share roads versus bike lanes will be. And it's just important to note that, and Christy, correct staff as she is pulling it up right now. Thank you, ma'am. Just to show how that will connect not only from Cricket South, but south all the way down to and through the high school on North Market, across to on Staunton / Riverside, depending on what you call it, in front of the high school and the stadium, and loop around back up to the Adams Street bike lane, and Fossway would then be a share road as well. Those will be clearly marked. We will continue to improve our wayfinding so that those connections are as clear as possible.
And I know that we covered this at the Safety and Health Committee. Was there a time frame on the rebranding, the logos and things? Was it six to 12 months?
Well, that's a more involved wayfinding. This would not be that involved. What I'm talking about is just making sure people know where they can jump on the bike lanes, where they can make the connections from the share road to the bike lanes. Some of the concerns that were brought up the other night, and so that people can see that that whole area there will connect 3 parks, several city amenities and facilities, as well as the school facilities, all in that general vicinity.
I know it's not going to make people happy at the junior high, but it's better to show the connections there. So just a comment. Any other things that have popped into your head at this point?
No, thank you.
And what is your recommendation or pleasure to proceed?
Move forward.
Okay, it's the unanimous decision of the committee to go ahead and proceed as staff has planned. And this will, the reappropriation will be hitting finance or another committee meeting, or just going to
It could
come?
be the end of the year, even reappropriation as necessary, and usually that is something that the auditors have.
Okay, very good, thank you. And so the next item, or item number 2, while we have construction going on in the
I'll break my questions.
Yeah.
Item number 2 is 2017 Sidewalk Repair Program, Phase 10. So in March, we actually came to you for the resolution of necessity for this project. So after the resolution of necessity, the property owners, we estimate an assessment, the property owners are notified. They have the opportunity at that point to do the work themselves. If they do not respond and they do not proceed with getting any kind of permit to do the work themselves, that's when we put the bid packet together, and that's essentially where we're at here right now. So we're asking for authorization to bid at a cost not to exceed $200,000. We do have more budgeted, but we didn't need all of the budgeted funds. So this project is south of East West Street, and kind of phase 9 was kind of hugged South Market and East West Street. So phase 10 is just further in, closer to the railroad tracks to the east. So I can, if you guys wanted, I have a hard copy sheet, or and that's pretty much, I guess I would entertain any questions.
when will notification go out to all these property owners?
So they've been notified. They were notified in the spring, yeah. And so then if they don't respond and they don't act on the notification, that's when we go out and we begin, do the bid process and get it.
And do we have to go through the AE?
AEB. So it's a little bit different situation when we do a sidewalk repair program, because we're allowing them to repair the sidewalks if they want on their own. So that is kind of their appeal process, versus the AEB, where we don't allow them to do the sidewalks on their own. So it's a different ORC code, 2727, 729.
Gotcha, I'm sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
But these are only portions of sidewalks that need to be repaired,
Yes.
not 100%.
Correct. So we go through and we essentially mark every, single square that needs to be repaired that doesn't meet the city's regulations and standards pertaining to sidewalk. And then, that is only the required repairs.
Gotcha.
I noticed that you said that the handicap ramps at the corners,
Yeah.
intersections, would be part of CDBG funding. Is that work going to be done at the same time, even though that's a separate contract?
It's actually, the CDBG project is bidding right now, so it'll
Okay.
actually be done.
So the work will be done together? They will all be-
It could be done together. It just depends on the different contractors.
If it's a different contractor.
Yeah, and
Okay.
how long the weather holds this fall and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just one question. Did anybody repair them themselves? Or
Yeah, so it varies by neighborhood, but out of the 47 lots that we assessed, 37 of them we're doing.
Okay.
10 they're doing on their own. We've had, in the last couple of years, we were just looking at those percentages the other day. We've had anywhere from 10% to like almost 40% do the work on their own. So that obviously keeps their costs low as possible, and then, and makes it so that we don't have to come back and bill them later, and we don't have to go through the assessment process. But, so 10 properties did it this time.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other council folks have any questions, comments, concerns? Anyone else in the audience have any comments, concerns? What is your pleasure?
Move forward.
Okay, again, it's unanimous with the committee to proceed as staff has recommended for the Phase 10 sidewalk repair program. Next item to come along is the McCaig Road Improvement Phase 4 project.
Yes, so McCaig Road Phase 4, this is actually the final phase. It's actually in the rounds for funding. This is an Ohio Public Works Commission, OPWC project. It is starting where Phase 3 left off, which is just west of Haywood Elementary School, and continues to the I-75 overpass. So as part of this project, so this is for design, not construction. So Christie will be constructing in 2018. We'll be going through design in the winter, and we'll be constructing in the summer of 2018 as well. As part of this project, because the intersection at McKeag and Dorset definitely needs assistance, we're doing an improvement, I would say. We're doing a study with respects to what is the right application at that intersection, whether it just be a signal. We're kind of throwing around the idea of a roundabout to see, so it'd be a passive intersection and be able to move traffic consistently through the intersection. So that's included in this project. And then, so we are over budget. We budgeted $100,000 or just shy of $100,000 in 2017. Kind of the same situation that we were just talking about. We've realized it's just taken us, that this is becoming it's becoming an issue, and so that's what Christy was saying when we were getting together and kind of getting a more realistic number before we get to this point. So we do have available funds in water, sewer, storm, and capital improvement. There may be, if it does go the roundabout direction, so the first phase is kind of that, the engineer, which is LJB out of Miamisburg, that we will do an intersection evaluation, get some estimates, cost estimates together pertaining to what our different alternatives are, and then make a recommendation whether we proceed forward in what direction with respect to the intersection. So we're requesting at a cost not to exceed $265,000, and this is for the design. It'll go to construction in 2018, the summer of 2018.
A roundabout actually is on my radar and was one of the questions I was going to ask, and so therefore I am. Is it large enough, that intersection?
So it would be much different, have a much different feel than what is here downtown. This is actually, a very large roundabout. You take out the signals and it functions more as a roundabout than, but this would be kind of a mini roundabout, so it wouldn't have a pretty function. It would be more function over fashion. It wouldn't have any kind of pretty centerpiece in the middle of it. So you would be able to traverse it and buses, because Troy Christian's right there, dropping off, picking up. So we will be coordinating with the buses and the property owners and the business owners right there at the corner a lot. But yes, it is. That's one of the things we need to look at is spacing. But we do, from preliminary, we think that it's large enough to entertain the idea of a mini roundabout.
Good. That'll be something that'll probably make a lot of folks happy to improve that flow, or at least
Yes.
the confusion.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it works well, but others voice that.
I think confusion is, yes.
Right.
And there is a lot of flow. There's a there's a high amount of traffic through that intersection.
There absolutely is. Yes, ma'am.
Well, while I'll definitely be happy to clear up any confusion, we will see, or council will see, the options for traffic control at that intersection. It wouldn't necessarily be automatically going to a roundabout.
It would not go
Recommendation.
automatically to a roundabout.
That would be included in, similar to what we just did with North Market. We have to come to you to get the authorization to bid that out.
I mean, so
So we
would council
include that as
expect,
part of that.
and council would expect to see whatever recommended traffic controls might go there with the reasons or the pros and the cons for each one?
Similar to
Okay.
what we just discussed with going to the road diet for North Market, same.
Okay, so that would all come back. Just wondering.
Okay.
That's all.
Mr. Young?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the only questions, obviously, is the intersection there, so a lot of people, since my ward kind of flows right into that, I hear about that a lot, which is a big issue, so that and the inability to see over the overpass as people are coming both ways, I guess we can keep that in mind, but I don't know how we're gonna.
Yeah, that's
Unless we're
kind of a
elevating
set
something.
elevation, right.
Right. So, yeah, looking forward to whatever options you guys
Yeah.
might have there, because I hear a lot about it.
Yeah, and so we are definitely entertaining, like, if the roundabout idea would be chosen or continue to look like a viable option, kind of having, I know we have a roundabout here in the city, but talking about we were talking about educating council as well as the public, the business owners around there and the general public pertaining to traversing a roundabout and things like that during the design phase. So in the coming months.
In addition, McCaig Road is wide enough up there to have shared lanes, east and west
Yes.
on both sides there.
Yes, but at this point, we haven't done it in phase 2 and phase 3, and I'm not certain, you caught me off guard even though I should have been ready for that question, whether that is identified in the complete streets as a main thoroughfare, like a shared lane bicycle thoroughfare. For some reason, I feel like it's not. And I think part of that is due to the narrow bridge the narrow overpass over 75.
Mr. Chair? That's going to be another issue that comes up, because the bicyclists in West Side have continued to ask about how do we get some kind of a safe passage east?
Yeah.
And that's like one of the only two.
Yes.
So continue to
And-
look at that.
Yeah, so, I guess we're kind of in the hold mode and waiting to hope that ODOT chooses to improve that bridge. But until they do, that's one of the reasons we were doing the complete streets actually. And I know that West Main has kind of been controversial, but at that point I was in discussions with ODOT about potentially widening and improving the overpass on West Main 41 over 75. And so we thought we could get, some, ODOT would give us, some leeway and give us some width there. But recently, ODOT's actually let us know that that's been pushed off and out of their radar a little bit more. So,
Any work on the overcrossing?
any work on the overcross, yes, yeah. So we continue to, wait and listen, because ODOT does own all of those overpasses. And so we, getting our voice to be heard, but other than that,
Thank you.
okay?
Any other council folks or in the audience have any questions, concerns, comments, staff comments? Any other questions?
Not for me.
No, thank you.
Okay. What is the pleasure of the fellow committee members here?
Yep, move forward.
Okay. It's unanimous decision of the committee to move forward as staff is asking here, and good luck.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Okay. Any other items to come before the Streets and Sidewalks Committee?
No, sir.
All right, then we are adjourned. Thank you all for attending.